Alright, hello everyone. This is part 3 of our first Gunboat game commentary. And when we left off, we had the builds where we see Russia scrambling north to hopefully keep that stalemate line at St. Petersburg and just kind of abandoning the south. Austria and Italy still making builds that signal that they want to work together with the army in Vienna and then the fleet Rome and army Naples for Italy, which here is better than, say, Army Rome and Fleet Naples, because we don't want, well, Italy doesn't want to spook Austria with any kind of quick movements that could lead to Venice and Tyrolia. So, for example, if it was an army in Rome, you could see Piedmont to Tyrolia and Rome to Venice, and that might, scare Austria off a bit. So they're going to continue lock in step for now. The Fleet Kiel was another interesting build because it can really only go north. It can only go north against England or Russia. It can't go west, per se, because it's not useful against France. No more than one fleet from Germany can be useful against France at this point, and he already has one in Belgium. So, not to mention that England's about to own most of France. So, to go against France is to go against England now. So, hopefully, that'll lead to some interesting tension between the players up in the north. So, let's try to guess some moves here. Assuming that Italy and Austria are still working together so strongly, we wouldn't expect a stab in Anatolia. So, we might see, for example, Armenia to Sevastopol, Ankara support hold Constantinople, and Aegean will either issue a support hold or maybe just go and settle in Greece. Obviously, Rome's going to be moving to the left, Naples going to be moving up to Rome, Western Med and Marseille are going to continue their attack on France. We might, for example, see Western Med to Spain, Marseille to Gulf of Lyon, Piedmont to Marseille, temporarily giving up that spot in order to better facilitate the fleet movements. Because it's always better to have your fleets in the sea territories. They are much more useful there. Among other things, obviously they can only convoy if they're in the sea territories. They are uncuttable by land units, and they just generally have more maneuverability. So I'm expecting to see either Marseille to Spain with Western Med support and Piedmont filling in Marseille, or Marseille going to Gulf of Lyon with Piedmont filling in Marseille and taking kind of the gamble there. As far as France goes, it's tough. Disbanding Spain and Picardy is, there's no real rhyme or reason. One's in the south, one's in the north. I think France is just giving up here. He's brought this upon himself. There's no good place for him to hide either, right? So Marseille, Iberia, Bray, Paris, all of them are easily takeable by England, Germany, or Italy. I don't even know what to say there. At best, I would suggest Gascony support hold Bray, Burgundy, Picardy for him, and hope that the Kiel build distracts England after surviving long enough from that insult. Right? So disbanding Spain was probably the correct choice there because it seems natural that Italy and England would fight over it. So you may actually get lucky with keeping it for a while as they struggle over it. And that's as far as France is going to go for now. Russia in the north shouldn't be making any enemies. It's just really, where does Kiel go? That's the big question. That is the majority question. So, for example, it could just go to Baltic this turn. We might see Baltic. Baltic without Berlin Kiel is possible. And that would be just to try to force Denmark. So if I was Germany and I wanted to just, give up that friendship I earned with England, I would do something like Kiel to Baltic, Berlin to Kiel, and then you have to worry about the lowlands in retaliation. So something like Belgium to Holland, Ruhr to Belgium, Munich to Ruhr. And you hope that he doesn't go through them this turn. Because there's no way to cover Holland, support Belgium with a strength of 2, and move Kiel to the Baltic, right? Uh, you can imagine moving to the Baltic without actually attacking England or Russia, just as a way to hold the line against Austria, but it's a little premature. A little premature, and an army would have done just as well for that purpose right now. So we'll have to see where that goes. But if he's going to Denmark, he probably wouldn't risk a straight move, Kiel to Denmark. It would probably be Kiel to Baltic, Berlin to Kiel. So let's see what happens there. And let me... All right. Interesting. Okay, so we did get just Baltic with holding Berlin in order to hold the line against Austria. It's not a bad move. The reason that I say it's not needed is because he doesn't have an army in Kiel, right? So Baltic has uncuttable support with Berlin, but Kiel would have been an unsupportable, uncuttable support to Berlin as well, as right. And this is all assuming that England and Russia don't stab him. The other possibility is he's trying to convoy to Livonia, but that doesn't help Russia. That doesn't do anything. And finally, there's the possibility that maybe he just wants Sweden. Maybe he says, I don't want to piss off my friend England, but I want to build. Russia and I aren't getting along as well. And Russia doesn't need Sweden to hold the line, right? Russia only needs Norway and St. Pete, and that's if they keep Russia around to hold the line. When Austria still isn't at 17, and Austria and Italy still haven't stabbed each other, there's a lot more incentive just to take Norway and St. Pete for yourselves and risk that. So I think it's going to be interesting. It looks like Belgium tried to make some support of North Sea to English Channel or something like that, maybe. Or it might have been Wales to Picardy, it looks like. Yeah, I think Wales to Picardy. Right, so Germany is still planning on being friends with England, which is probably the correct choice here. He can't afford to pick that fight with England with Austria knocking on his door. France made about the moves that I recommended. This is interesting here in Iberia. It looks like Portugal tried to support maybe Western Med to Spain. Instead, we got Marseille to Spain with Western Med support. Hopefully, it seems like England wants to be friends with Italy, right? Moving all those units north, maybe against the Kiel build, maybe to cut out Russia. It might give France some breathing room, right? France should have died here, but now France might live on in Paris for a while. Germany cannot afford to send 2 armies to Paris. And then England and Italy only have 1 army. And that's the thing about Paris, right? It's so inland that you need 2 land units to take it. So France might actually be sticking around longer than we expected. So that's what's happening in the west right now. In the east, we see, as predicted, Rome to Tyrrhenian Sea, Naples to Rome, right? He didn't build it in Rome, again, just to keep Austria happy. This is a good example, a very good example where you choose a slightly suboptimal move tactically to ensure it makes a diplomatic statement. And that's something a lot of people who are new at Gunboat don't quite grasp right away. So I'm going to point that out as much as I can. I don't know what this Aegean Sea is supporting. I don't know. I don't know if he's trying to tell Serbia to take Greece. I'll have to look at the order log later. But I assume it's something friendly, right? It's something friendly to Austria. Austria's playing it pretty conservative in the south, right? Serbia support hold Bulgaria. Bulgaria support hold Constantinople. Is that a failed move for Ankara here? I don't think so. It doesn't seem like Ankara would be attacking Constantinople, especially when Armenia just supported Romania to Sevastopol. Right, Russia's fleeing to the north. There's probably a green line here. That's a support issue. I'll have to check the order log again. That's one downside of this format. So the reason that that's one slide of the downside of this format. The reason that I had Captain Meme send me this game in the form of a PowerPoint presentation was, among other reasons, that I'm I don't have to go online and look at the game itself, which means I don't get the order logs, but I'm pretty good at reading the full maps normally. So I'm not sure quite what happened here, why there's this red arrow, but I can't imagine Ankara went to Constantinople. I'll have to check that. It doesn't really matter. The point is that Italy and Austria are getting along fine. They are starting to steamroll the board, and then between Russia, Germany, England, and France, only two of them at most will get to survive, unless they're incredibly generous to Russia. Um, and we're going to have to figure that out. It looks like it was just going to be EG versus AI, but England keeps changing his mind whether he's going to commit to taking out France, and that's unfortunate. And I don't think Germany planned for this splits quite as quickly. He's not going to lose any centers, right? So even though Burgundy can be cut in revenge by France, or can be cut by Marseille, Berlin's enough to hold Munich right now. However, next turn we can easily see Silesia in Prussia or Warsaw to Prussia, and then Warsaw fills in that space, and suddenly that's cutting Berlin, and Munich needs to be support held by that army that's currently in Burgundy, but that cannot be depended on right now, which is why I disapproved of the fleet build if it's for purely defensive purposes against Austria, right? Army Kiel is strictly better in this case. Uh, I would recommend he move Burgundy back to Ruhr, to be honest. Now that England has also pulled out, that lone army can't do anything. He needs it for defense. So we'll probably see that. I'm hoping to see Prussia and Livonia filled out by Austria. He'll get a build from Sevastopol. I mean, he's cutting it so close. It's so close to the point where if he doesn't build a fleet, he's just giving up his opportunities to solo, because there will be no more 3 builds for him, right? He's at, if he wants any more builds, he's stabbing Italy at this point, essentially. So without the fleet to do that, he is locking in his fate as an AI whatever draw. Alright, let's see what happens in the fall. Oh, okay. Yeah, so Austria made the correct decision here. I always say play to win, right? The goal is to get 18 centers. Anything else is debatable. Right? You can debate whether a 2-way draw is better than a 3-way draw. You can debate whether a defeat is different than a survive. You cannot argue that all of them are inferior to the win. And the only way that Austria was going to win here is by both building a fleet and or stabbing Italy. And that's what we have. So it seems like Ankara was going to Constantinople. And Aegean was supporting Serbia to Greece. I did read the arrows correctly. It seems that Italy simply wanted a switch for logistical purposes, right? He said, look, I think things make more sense this way. So Austria takes Smyrna, which allows Ankara to take Constantinople, which allows Black Sea to slip into Ankara, which is pretty funny. I don't know why Italy would try slip Ankara into Constantinople without also following it up with Armenia to Ankara. I think that was a mistake. He had Ankara before, yeah. I think that was a fatal mistake, possibly. Still supporting Sevastopol. So we can see that now Austria is up 2, Italy's down 1. And he's starting to head towards the home centers. So he can force Venice with Trieste and Tyrolia. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty here. So he can force Venice with Trieste and Tyrolia, with Tyrolia to Venice, Trieste support Tyrolia to Venice. However, it's suboptimal because it leaves Trieste in port. So if he just simply goes Tyrolia to Venice, Trieste to Adriatic, Vienna to Trieste, it sets up more, but it allows Marseille to fall back. So it's probably much more optimal to go Tyrolia to Piedmont, Vienna to Trieste, and Trieste to Adriatic. Now, we can assume that he'll be in the Ionian, right? But either Aegean or Tyrrhenian is going to go to Ionian, and that'll cut any Adriatic support, so it might be best just to get Venice now. So it's not too suboptimal to keep Trieste in port. Even if you try to go to the Adriatic in the fall, you're probably going to be bounced by whatever's in Ionian, but you might be able to mind game him into going to Apulia instead, and then you get Adriatic. And the important thing is not only to get the Italian centers, it's to get the Italian home centers, right? So I'm going to go with final answer, Tyrolia to Venice, Vienna to Tyrolia, Trieste support Tyrolia to Venice. I think that secures Venice, and you'll do his best to get Trieste out of port to build yet another fleet. As far as former Turkey goes, he has a powerful attack here. Smyrna's kind of isolated. So Italy has Aegean and Armenia, but Sevastopol is now free to go to Armenia. So we're going to see Sevastopol to Armenia, probably Bulgaria Khan, Smyrna support, Bulgaria Khan, Greece support, Room Bull. That's what I'm guessing here. Good. England left one fleet there. That's important. It only takes 3 fleets to completely stalemate navally the Iberia centers, right? So if you're England, if you have North Atlantic, Mid-Atlantic, Portugal, you completely cut off any navies getting to the north, right? Because at best they can have Spain's south coast, Western Mediterranean, and North Africa, and that 3-power attack cannot overcome Portugal, Mid-Atlantic, North Atlantic, right? Where Portugal and North Atlantic, or Irish, or English Channel support Mid-Atlantic, and there's no way for those to get cut except by a fleet that's already on the northern half of the board. So while it's completely 100% mathematical blocked with 3 fleets, with only 2 fleets, it still takes a lot of effort, right? So Italy could put something in North Africa, could do that, and try to get through with those 3 fleets, but since there was just an Austrian stab, he can't bother focusing on the Mid-Atlantic. So good on England, mostly stalemated there where he doesn't have to worry about further Italian incursion, although, to be fair, it's mostly because of Austria. Right? We see Paris to Burgundy. France is not going to let that up. Bray to Picardy. Wales to Picardy. You'll note, so the way that web diplomacy allows you to enter orders, it only allows you to enter valid orders. So, for example, England could not order Wales to Syria because there's no valid convoy chain to do that. The same way it can't order, for example, Austria cannot order Army Moscow to Budapest. However, you can order convoy movements for an army, even if you don't order the fleet to actually convoy that unit. So here, Wales was ordered to move to Picardy via convoy. However, because English Channel didn't convoy the unit properly, in fact it moved completely differently, obviously the convoy doesn't happen, but the arrow still shows up on the map. And this is an intermediate to advanced technique where you can kind of show people where you want to go by using up an army in an illegitimate convoy order, which some countries can do better than others, right? So it depends on, do you have armies just sitting around that you weren't planning on using, and what are the available legal convoys that you can order to show your intentions. So there's the first possibility where this is an advanced technique where he was demonstrating visually to the board that he's still against France, right? He's like, I want Wales to be on French territory, even though I can't afford to do that right now. The second possibility is that he ordered Wales Picardy and then forgot that he ordered English Channel Mid-Atlantic. And that would happen way more often than one would hope. Note that England only got Mid-Atlantic because Gascony cut Spain. That's interesting. All right, so Gascony, Spain, Bray, Picardy, Paris, Burgundy. Yeah, France is just throwing out shit, hoping something sticks or something gets him his revenge. And that's just what he's doing right now. If he was really concentrated on getting centers, he would be doing Gascony supports Paris to Burgundy and concentrating on, say, Marseille, for example. Or Paris supports Bray to Picardy and concentrating on getting Burgundy back and then Belgium. It looks like he's just throwing out moves, to be honest. England trying to take Norway. Oh, that's tricky. Very nice of Russia. Very nice of Russia. So what he did here was he assumed St. Petersburg was going to get tapped, right? He's like, well, you know, St. Petersburg cannot support hold Norway. So let's go through the reasoning. Okay, we're going to go through the reasoning step by step that led to this. St. Petersburg cannot support hold Norway. Therefore, Finland must support hold Norway because I know Norway's getting attacked with 2 power this turn. However, if Finland support holds Norway, Norway and obviously Finland cannot cover Sweden because you cannot move and be support held. And you come to a paradox where, well, not a paradox, but a contradiction where the move set you have come to a conclusion to, and it seems like it has to be that move set, is not okay. You are not willing to accept this. So you have to get tricky. And you say, well, is there a way that I can save Norway and Sweden? And the answer is yes. So Norway to Sweden, right? That's 1-to-1, and we're just assuming Baltic's going to Sweden. Unfortunately, we already know that. But if you look at the map, right, the fact that he went to Baltic, not to Denmark, and he didn't do Berlin-Kiel, it's pretty obviously he's going to Sweden, right? We talked about that, and we weren't absolutely sure if he was going to stab Russia, but it was either stab Russia or just sit there all stupid-like issuing supports to Berlin, which is not useful here, especially when we also talked how he needs more armies, right? So good on Russia. Realizing that Sweden's going to get attacked with 1 power. So move to Sweden. Well, now, how do you not lose Norway? And the answer is there's a specific, this is a specific name for this, is a beleaguered garrison, or a beleaguered unit, where if a unit is attacked with more power than it's holding that space, normally it would be dislodged. But if there's another attack of equal power, then neither person moves into that space, and thus the unit is not dislodged, right? It's an interesting technicality where a unit is not dislodged because someone attacked it with equal power. A unit is dislodged when another unit successfully moves in, right? So if no one successfully moves into Norway, then Norway is not dislodged, even though it was attacked with more power than it's holding that territory with. So this is a great example of using moves rather than supports to hold your territories. Good tactical play by Russia here. It turns out that Finland to Sweden, St. Petersburg support hold Norway would have worked because Austria decided to stab Italy at that moment. Although Moscow wasn't necessary, he didn't have to support hold Sevastopol unless Russia and Italy were both working together very well and already knew he was going to stab Italy. But good tactical play by Russia. Don't want to take anything away from that. All right, so we've talked a little bit about what happened, what we plan to see. I'm mostly interested in this Italy-Austria stat. I think that's the interesting part. However, whether France survives here is also kind of interesting, and whether they can cut out Russia safely is also interesting, right? Because if Austria does get St. Petersburg and throws units in Livonia and Moscow, it's not easy to take back. England and Germany can force it back, but it takes time, and it requires you to do things like put fleets in the Barents Sea, which is extremely limiting their use elsewhere. So it's not an empty threat for Russia to give up St. Petersburg here. All right. Interesting. Uh-oh, I don't like that. I do not approve of these shenanigans. A fleet in Venice completely stops the attack on Italy. There is no further movement, right? Venice, right? An army in Venice can threaten Rome and Tuscany and Piedmont. A fleet in Venice cannot. It's a dead end. Just a dead end. Was Mid-Atlantic supporting Gascony to Spain? Because it looks like it. That's weird. Whatever. Let's look at this. So, right? Austria, I didn't vocalize it last phase, and I should have, but the attack continuation that I specified for Austria on Italy's home centers requires him not to go full force on the Munich-Berlin stalemate line that Germany has. And he chose that to be more important, it looks like. So that's what's happening there. He says that attacking Munich and Berlin is more important than continuing this attack on Italy, but I don't agree. You can't be... I think that may have not been a good move, because now Italy can start recuperating and not worry about further attacks on his mainland. But let's take a good examination of it. Let's even assume that England's not going to take Spain, which is not an easy assumption here. Not an easy assumption whatsoever. Tyrolia must support hold Venice because Piedmont Tuscany is 2 power. And then you have Ionian to Adriatic, and you can't even block that with Venice because then the 2 power attack succeeds, as he cannot support hold Venice if it moves to Adriatic. So suddenly Italy has Tuscany, Piedmont, Adriatic, Ionian. Even if he loses, so if he loses Venice, he has to do a disband. And let's even assume he holds Spain. I mean, let's assume he loses Spain, right? Even if he loses Spain, he can disband Marseille and disband Tirrenian Sea, which would now be, I guess, Ionian, and still have plenty of firepower against Austria. It'd be really hard for Austria to get out because Austria builds another fleet in Trieste, but now just has to constantly support hold Venice with 2 power and can't go anywhere. And I think that just doesn't bode well for Austria getting a win, right? Austria doesn't get a win out of this. I think Trieste to Venice rather than Tyrolia to Venice is asking for a draw rather than a win. So we've looked at that microenvironment. Let's look at former Turkey real quick. So we're going to have Serbia support hold Greece. Bulgaria support hold Constantinople. Constantinople support Armenia to Smyrna. However, Russia is more mad at Austria than Italy. So he's moving Ankara to Constantinople. So we might actually see Constantinople to Ankara with Armenian support. Either way, it's even for Italy and possibly bad for Turkey. Austria. Can't talk. Right? So imagine, it's very easy to imagine Aegean support Smyrna. Smyrna support Ankara to Constantinople. In that case, it would still be even, and Russia would survive. So I don't think Austria is going to get more builds out of there right now. And it's very hard to see with Ankara, with Fleet Ankara, Fleet Aegean, and Army Smyrna. Very hard to see him making more growth there because he cannot get into the Black Sea. He cannot get into Eastern Med. This is as most as he'll ever get unless he goes Armenia, Syria, and a new unit in Armenia, but he does not have the units to spare, right? He does not have the units to spare. That's why he's self-bouncing in Livonia, because he doesn't feel like he can afford to send Moscow out to fight. So this might not be the Austrian solo that it could have been or might have been. And that's unfortunate. In the north, we have more shenanigans. Baltic Sea has begun to support hold Berlin and thus cannot perform with England in the north. And STP, Finland, and Sweden will be more than enough to hold off 2 English fleets for the time being. So let's see how this stab by Austria continues to work out. England decides not to go for Spain. I think that is the correct choice there. Going for Spain really only helps Austria try to solo. Oh my god, speaking of Austria, he is proving me wrong. Oh no, Germany got mind gamed. This Austria really knows how to slip into centers. There is no... Okay, so I didn't talk about this last phase. I talked about this 2 phases ago, how Germany does not have enough armies to hold Munich against a full-on Austrian assault. And that's what we saw here. So this Austria is really smart. I hope I was this Austria. So, right, this is another example where let's go through the steps of what Germany was thinking. Here's what Germany's thinking. Austria has 3 power attack on Munich with Tyrolia, Bohemia, Silesia. And Prussia can tap Berlin. Now that's a 3 power attack on a 2 strength Munich, assuming rear support holds it, which is not enough. So again, we come to a situation where a naive run through of the moves leads to an unacceptable result. And you try to find a different way to do it. You try to find a different way out. And you ask, well, what if he's using Silesia to support, right? If he's using Silesia to support, then I can cut it, right? I can cut that support with Berlin. And the fact that Prussia cuts Berlin doesn't matter. And now that attack on Munich is 2 strength, and I'm supporting it at a 2 strength capacity, and therefore I succeed, right? And now you ask yourself, well, what if he goes for Berlin with 2? And you go, well, if he goes through Berlin, he'll probably use Prussia to support. Why would he use Prussia to support? Because he wants to keep Prussia around to southbound Slavonia, right? And let's see. And so, Silesia can't be attacked by Munich in similar fashion that he's thinking of attacking Silesia, right? So you go, well, I'll cut Prussia, cut Silesia, and support hold Munich. And unfortunately, Austria sees that and just walks right in. And, anybody who's decent at Gunboat should be going, why would Silesia be supporting this, right? I think I've said it earlier in this commentary, but one of the fundamental things of tactics in general, not even Gunboat, just tactics of this game, is that you attack with the cuttable units and support with the uncuttable units, right? There is no reason, even though it's not even almost clever, even though it's an alternate strategy of attacking Silesia, hoping that it's one of the support movers, it's just not legitimate. And it looks like he didn't even support hold Munich. He moved Ruhr Munich, Tyrolia. And the same thing would have happened if he support held Ruhr Munich. But apparently he tapped Tyrolia in an effort to help Italy. And that's very noble of him. But he obviously pays dearly. Not only does Germany pay dearly, where he's in a shit position with 2 disbands, the whole board pays, because now Austria gets 3 builds this turn. Wow, I was wrong about Anatolia, and I have to figure out why. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, so Constantinople supported Armenia to Ankara, and nothing tapped it. So Black Sea got Ankara got dislodged into Black Sea. That's smart play by Austria. Wow, okay. So Italy gets Venice back, but we get another fleet build, and there's a fleet in Apulia, and it's just not. It's looking good for Austria again, mostly to that German mistake, right? Mostly to that German mistake. The mistake of building FKL rather than AKL, and the mistake of this silly last-ditch attempt to cut Silesia made him lose 2 rather than the 1 he was going to lose anyways. And Austria has too many armies for Germany to hope to be some kind of like backyard terrorist with his, right? So that's one option some people sometimes try, but Austria has so many armies that he can easily round up and force dislodge Silesia. And it's just not looking good for Germany or the West. I'll notice that England did get Norway. But he lost Denmark. I was looking for why he didn't get a build. He lost Denmark, won Norway. At this point, Russia's pretty fuck it, right? Russia's like, look, England, if you're going to try to cut me out, I'm just going to help Austria win. Perfectly legitimate response. Perfectly legitimate response. And so he's going to keep Black Sea just kind of as a collateral, but leaving St. Petersburg open, I think, is almost exclusively inviting Austria in as his 18th. And my opinions keep flip-flopping on Austria's solo chances, but people keep making the moves I don't recommend. Just make the moves that I tell you to move, people. That's a good lesson for full press games. Always do what I tell you to do. It's the best. Believe me. All right, right, and disband Belgium for Germany. So wait, why does France only have two? France has 2 units because he only has 2 centers. Okay, that's good. Uh, France should be easily eliminated here. He might make a mad dash through Belgium, but England's gonna get Bray, and then sorry, I spoke too soon. I forgot about Paris. Right, it's easy to lose Bray. It's not obvious how he's gonna lose Paris. If this was a full press game, it would be so much easier, but it's not. Um, we might see France around for a long time. Denmark is just there to cause trouble. I'm expecting to see Finland to Sweden, Denmark to Sweden. I think that would be a powerful bounce. He might just do Denmark to Kiel or Denmark support Berlin to Kiel if he's truly going to throw this all out, which I think he should do. So the problem, though, is once Norway is in Sweden, he loses Denmark and loses a lot of his power. But if I was Russia here, this is probably not what Russia is going to do. If I was Russia here, I'd be doing Denmark support Berlin to Kiel, Finland support Moscow to St. Petersburg. But I'm a very vengeful bastard. Okay. As far as Italian moves go, I mean, Aegean has to block Constantinople from getting anywhere. And as long as he's... however, Austria has this nice move of... Oh, no, he doesn't. I was going to say Bulgaria to Constantinople, Constantinople to Ankara, Ankara to Armenia. Sorry, let me check the time here. Yeah. In order to, like, shift units around and heavily pressure Smyrna. However, Constantinople and Ankara is useless against Smyrna because the fleet, right? Because as a fleet, it cannot attack Smyrna, which is kind of interesting, actually. It means that Austria has very little ways of getting more firepower on Smyrna unless he brings another fleet around via Sevastopol. I mean, another army around via Sevastopol, or somehow getting a fleet past the Ionian, which is going to be tricky. It's going to be very tricky. So, if I was Austria, I might have waived the build just to get another fleet next year. But I think I'm repeating myself too much about how important fleets are for soloing Austria. So I'll try not to bring it up. But for example, if he waived the build, he could do something like Budapest to Trieste with Tyrolia support, Trieste to Albania, Apulia to I don't know, like Ionian or something. And then once he had 3 fleets, he could force Adriatic. He could try to force the Ionian. As it stands, it's probably like, oh, so Italy has to cover Naples. Very hard to cover Naples here. So he's probably going to do Trieste to Adriatic with Apulia support and let Ionian get Naples in exchange for control of Adriatic and Apulia. Let's see. No, he tried to put Apulia back in Venice. That was never going to work. That was never going to work, especially if Tyrolia isn't tapping Piedmont. I disapprove of that shenanigan. Disapprove. Interesting. Italy is full on defending his home centers with Aegean to Ionian, somewhat leaving Smyrna in the dark, but I don't know if he knew this was going to happen or not, and I don't know if he was like depending on it or not. But Black Sea tapping Constantinople saved Smyrna for a long time, indeed. However, it's a trick, right? So if he does that again, Bulgaria to Constantinople to Smyrna with Ankara support, loses Smyrna for Italy, Russia. That's no good. However, Black Sea can just cut Ankara, right? So Black Sea has a 50-50 shot each turn of keeping the status quo. Unfortunately, that's not the best, right? 50-50 shot of keeping the status quo. Eventually, you'll lose that coin toss. So hopefully something else happens that makes them much more secure. And Budapest to Romania, I have a feeling, is going to Sevastopol and then to Armenia. And then once it's in Armenia, it's lights out for Smyrna. Uh, so that's going to be very tricky. Uh, good moves by Austria in the center. Knowing that Selesnya is going to come back to Berlin, like I said, he can't use it as a suicide backline unit. He attacks in the opposite direction with equal power, right? So there are three ways to save a territory, right? There's straight support holding. There is cutting their support, and there is attacking in the exact opposite direction with equal power. And because two units are not allowed to adjacently switch unless via convoy, the two units will not trade places and you save that territory. So this is the third way of doing that, and it was very successful. Uh, it looks like France is trying to be important. So you'll notice that I said France was kind of meandering around and just kind of poking people for revenge. I'm hoping Gascony to Burgundy and leaving Bray open is because he wants to be part of that stalemate line against Munich. It could also be just to take Belgium out of revenge. Looking more at the north, we see England continuing to go up. Nicely start, right? Italy and England are very nicely coordinating, vacating the mid-Atlantic and Iberia. We'll see if France turns down that juicy Spain center. Not obvious that he will. Not obvious that he will at all. England going to Skagerrak and Sweden. I don't approve of this from Russia. Russia should have either supported Moscow to St. Petersburg or gone to Sweden. Just going to St. Petersburg, I don't think saves him. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I think it would be much more important to go to Sweden because if you let England have Sweden, you also let him have Denmark. And I said that last phase as well. Denmark's gone now. It's going to like retreat to either Baltic or Helioglyte land, and it's going to play poke the people that me and me lose and hope that they lose too. And that's unfortunate, but that's how it goes. Not much to predict here. I mean, England's going to go north and take Denmark. STP's going to try to go to Moscow, probably. Barents is probably going to cover Norway, because Norway and Barents are equivalent for now, when all that matters is attacking and holding St. Petersburg. Italy is going to hold Venice. He might tap Tyrolia. That's up in the air. But as is... in fact, we'll probably see Naples support Ionian to Apulia. Because it would force disband Apulia, and that would be super powerful for him, especially if Trieste is still blocked. So he can get Venice if he does Apulia to Adriatic, Tyrolia to Venice, Trieste support Tyrolia to Venice? No, I don't think he can get Venice back at all, and I think there's a way for Italy to force disband Apulia. So I think this is going to end the Austrian solo attempt unless Russia and or France is really good at throwing the game and getting Austria past Berlin, Munich. Let's see what happens. So, yeah, France decided to go for Belgium and Spain. France is having none of this hope you let me in the draw shit. Good on France for that. Haven't liked most of France's moves, but I like that one. Although that's probably because I like their spirit rather than their tactics. Like I said, Barents Norway, take Denmark with Sweden. STP Moscow, that was obvious. Sevastopol, that was obvious. Black Sea guessed wrong, right? It was case 1, like I talked about, rather than case 2. Black Sea guessed wrong. That's unfortunate and causes a disband of both Armenia and Black Sea. And this means Austria has basically an entire, not theater, but an entire environment that they do not have to worry about. However, we do see the forced disband in Apulia there. Good thing. I'm happy that I called that. Right, and they're going to get rebuilt as armies, but Now, so Piedmont, Venice, assuming that you have no fleets, right, as Austria or any Eastern power, like, well, Turkey always has fleets if he's in Trieste, but Russia or Austria, right? If you don't have any fleets, then Piedmont support hold Venice is impenetrable, right? That's a very narrow space where all you have is Tyrolia and Trieste to work with. So Italy can basically just sit now. There is the fleet in Smyrna. However, uh, 3 fleets for Italy, it means that he can lay kind of easy on that. However, if what the fuck? Did English Channel and Mid-Atlantic attack each other? That must have been a misorder. He must have meant English Channel go to North Sea. This makes me think that convoy from Wales to Picardy may have been a misorder too, and not some advanced communication technique. Alright, disband Ruhr, disband Holland. What's Germany keeping? Oh, Silesia. Oh, disagree with that. We already talked about how Silesia is going to get forced disband very soon. Should have kept Holland or kept Ruhr and tried to get into the stalemate, I think. That's unfortunate. Austria making all the right moves. Very good play by Austria, except for the Venice situation. I don't approve of that. But in former Turkey and in former Germany, very good moves. Very good moves indeed. Unfortunately, this is exciting with France. And yeah, England has to build those armies there. He has to build those armies for 2 reasons. One, well, three reasons. The 0th reason is that the fleet presence by Austria is already basically contained. Italy has 3 fleets, Austria has 2, and England still has Mid-Atlantic they can send over. So there's no need to build more fleets. So 0th reason is that there's no need to build more fleets. The next 2 reasons that there's a need for armies. You need armies to take back Kiel, Berlin, Munich, or stop them from going further. And you need armies to fuck up France, because France is obviously out for revenge. He doesn't care how far Austria goes inland, and all the power to him. That's the correct play, honestly. But if England's playing to stop the solo, then he needs to get onto the mainland and he needs to stop France from suiciding into Germany. Even though most of the damage is already done. Most of the damage is already done. Let's make another assessment of Austria's solo capacity. Let's assume Austria gets no more centers from Italy, which is not necessarily correct if he does some tricky stuff like moving Trieste to Albania and then building another fleet, or if France successfully fucks up Italy and Marseille in Spain. Both very possible. The former, however, Italy has not shown signs of doing that. Italy has not shown a presence of mind to wave builds or make sure his fleets do more than get stuck in Venice and Trieste. So I think that's out the window. He can hold Marseille and Spain for a long time. So Marseille, Spain, Piedmont, Marseille, kind of vulnerable in that Tyrolia, Piedmont could fuck up his day, but Austria wouldn't know what's happening. There's no way Austria would guess now is the time Tyrolia, Piedmont. And then once you do that, they're completely safe, even if they have Gascony, Burgundy. Right, and the point is, assumption number 1, Austria is not getting more centers than Italy. However, we should have started with this. My apologies. Let's count how many centers that Austria has. So we have 1, 2, 3 home, 4, 5, 6, 7 the Balkans, 8, 9, 10 Turkey, 11, 12, 13 of Russia, 14, 15, 16 of Germany. He only needs 2 more. He's not getting St. Pete because Sweden to Finland, right? And then Sweden to St. Petersburg with Norway's support every year. You can never attack St. Petersburg with more than 2 as Austria. So as long as England has a constant 2 attack on St. Petersburg, it'll remain neutral. Or not neutral. It won't change into Austrian hands. So the only way you're getting more centers is Holland, Belgium, Paris. Can Austria get to Holland, Belgium, or Paris? Let's find out next time. This is the end of part 3. I hope you guys had some fun, and I'll see you in part 4.